Hey folks, Phil Gallagher of ThrabenU for another direct to YouTube special. Today's video is funded by Nathan Lepetz, who donated to see 20 giants in action. I know what you're thinking. 20 giants. What does that deck do? Alright, so hear me out. Step 1, Cavernous Souls. Giant. Step 2, cast 19 of the 20 giants uncounterably. Because Oryizian Totem can turn into a giant, but it's not going to be uncounterable off of Cavern of Souls. Okay, so what do we have here? We have Bone Crusher Giants as removal. We have Calamity Bearers, which is the whole reason why people are trying this deck list right now. The giant source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player. It deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. So I think the original, like, one of these effects was like a Furnace of Wrath. And so when all of your creatures deal double damage, all of a sudden it doesn't matter if you're paying a touch more mana for them because they're going to hit like trucks. So we have Tectonic Giant, which when it attacks or becomes the target of a spell an opponent controls, you either deal 3 damage to each opponent or you exile the top 2 cards of your library, choose one, until the end of your next turn you can play that card. And then there's Quakebringer. Your opponents can't gain life. It's a 5/4. Beginning of your upkeep, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. This triggers if it's on the battlefield or if it's in your graveyard and you control another giant. It also has Foretell, but I'm not expecting to use that. So the idea behind this deck is that, oh yeah, and Crystal and Giant, like art, we love Crystal and Giant on this channel. The idea of this deck is the idea of this deck is that you use the traditional like Red Prison Moon Stompy pieces of Blood Moon, Trinisphere, and Chalice of the Void to slow down your opponents enough so that you can play these very powerful giant cards that are a little bit slower than normal. Now, I think it'll be yesterday for you all, maybe 2 days ago, I put out a video about current sins of Legacy. And one of those sins was playing cards that are too cute or too expensive. So when I look at this deck list, my question is, are these giants worth the squeeze? Is this better than just playing the traditional 3-drop like Goblin Rabblemaster or Legion Warboss? And when I look at this deck list, I can't immediately say, no, it's probably not, because this card is a 6 power threat. So that's pretty insane, right? Like that's a 3-turn clock. And when you combine it with some of these other things, they're going to attack for 6. Like, let's say you have Calamity Bearer and Tectonic Giant. Tectonic Giant attacks, directly dealing 6 damage to each opponent, and then it hits for another 6 in the actual combat damage step. So, is this good? Is this cute? I err on the side of it being cute, but I've played a lot of Red Prison, and I can't dismiss what's going on here. It's maybe a little slow, but I can't say that it's bad. The sideboard here is not particularly notable, other than maybe Torpor Orb. Torpor Orb is specifically here as an out for Doomsday, which is a strategy that can be a little hard for Red Prison to fight. And specifically, you're shutting off Thassa's Oracle so that the trigger doesn't happen and kill you. So let's jump into a Legacy League and see how this feels. Generally speaking, I think a Red Prison deck is going to be in an okay to good position in the metagame. Let's see how this one feels. All right, if you're excited for this content, leave me a comment, subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. That sort of stuff means a lot to me and helps the channel grow. Okay, let's take a look at my hand here. I have 1 piece of mana acceleration, I have 3 lands, and a varied set of spells. I think I'm going to keep this. This isn't a particularly fast hand, in that, like, I can't just go off on turn 1 or anything. But I think this is not worth mulliganing by any stretch of the imagination. The worst card here is the Totem. Oh, I want to reset this upkeep stop. Noble Hierarch. Okay. Oh, wow. Now this turn got really complicated. If I want to Blood Moon this game, this is the turn to do it, before my opponent can fetch another basic. The reason to Blood Moon is primarily to keep myself from getting wastelanded. My opponent will probably have some degree of fixing for their spells. Wow, this turn is really hard. Chronosphere keeps them from double spelling. Blood Moon keeps Dryad Arbor shenanigans, Gaia's Cradle sort of stuff in check, makes it harder to cast double pip off-color spells. I think I'm gonna Moon. I don't think this game is going to end quickly. And if it's not going to end quickly and my opponent is on Maverick, I don't want them to have very many lands in Graveyard. Hello. Alright. Giant or Trinisphere. Also, my opponent could just be Infect, in which case I really want Trinisphere in play. What? Alright, so they're immediately going for Fate Seal me. I don't know that I can put a name to my opponent's archetype yet. They had to read something, and then it went to the bottom of the library. Hexproof counter would be sick. We got Death Touch. So my opponent can just, like, bounce Crystalline Giant every turn until I hit a Hexproof counter. I would say that I am currently unfavored in this position. I would like to change my evaluation to heavily unfavored. My opponent also has a piece of interaction active since they didn't attack with Noble Hierarch. So this is 5 to activate and turn it into a 4/4. It is a 4/4 that, like, oddly enough dodges Jace, which is worth something. I don't think I have the luxury of time. Jace is already at 9. Yeah, we're basically dead now. I'm not technically dead, and I'm going to play this out a little bit longer, mostly to get a better feel for what my opponent is doing. As of right now, I'm putting them as a Bant control deck. but maybe I'll get a feel for whether or not like they have things like True Name Nemesis in there. I'm gonna have some sideboarding options. Oh, okay. Yeah, they do have True Name Nemesis. Alright, I think this is the point where I can go ahead and comfortably concede. I can't take that True Name off the table. My opponent has a Jace at 11. Like, not gonna get out of that. Okay. So I can't really answer True Name Nemesis. That's good to know. I want Fiery Confluence to sweep Mana Dorks. I want Chandra because it's a Planeswalker. And these cards are playable. Don't want this totem. I think Blood Moon is fine on the play. I think it's questionable on the draw. I think I'm going to end up playing a slower game where Trinisphere is not necessarily the best thing in the world. Would like to play both Spyglasses, I think. Thing triggering from Graveyard is sick, but I think I'm just going to trim a 5-drop. I'm boarding in 2 6-drops. I would like to play first. Okay. I don't know that this hand is actually good. I can play a turn 1 Calamity Bearer, but I'm playing against a Source of Plowshares deck that can just answer that card. I can Sorcerer Spyglass as a lock piece on turn 1 into turn 2 Calamity Bearer. I think I can do better than this. This is a much more balanced hand. I'm much happier with this. I think Bone Crusher Giant goes back here. I think I want to keep both of my lands. Sorry. Treating Ancient Tomb like it just like absolutely cannot go back no matter what. I think I want to keep both of my other lands. That just lets me curve Crystal and Giant off Cavern Souls into Calamity Bearer and potentially do a ton of damage. Yeah, I'll name Flooded Strand. I kind of think my opponent was supposed to force and pitch Hull Breacher there. I name Giant. Nope, 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 nope. Oh, Hexproof is sick. That's a bit of a lucky top deck. That does give me a much better idea of what my opponent is doing, though. I know that I want the Abrade for game 3 if we go to it. I'd like to get some sort of evasion on Crystalline Giant either this turn or next turn. First strike is fine. This is to a permanent or player, right? Yeah. That means that beats Batterskull already. Another one. Reach on one, flying on the other. Like I can hit in for 6 and take 4 back. Is that fine, or do I just want to hold back? I think I can hold back. I can also just like trade one of these for the germ token and then let Crystalline Giants spiral the game out of control. I think I'm just going to crash in. Weird spot in terms of combat math. Also weird spot in terms of blowout potential via Swords to Plowshares. I know 3 of my opponent's 5 cards. Alright. Oh, I forgot about the Exalted. Do I want to trade off? I can trade off and just let this Crystalline Giant potentially take over the game on its own. But if my opponent can re-equip the Batterskull, that's pretty bad. I am going to go ahead and trade off, I think. I don't know if that's right. Oh, Death Touch first strike is sick. Alright, what am I doing with Spirit Guide? Am I casting it, or is it going under Mox? I think I'm just casting it. This theoretically puts my opponent on a 2-turn clock. Trample. Starting off this flooded strand was really good. If I get put on the back foot, all I need to do is wait until this has something like lifelink, and then I'll be good to go. So many of the remaining modes on this Crystalline Giant are just really strong right now. See what my opponent can do about it. Okay, you can enable your mana. See. Oh, no Stoneforge attack, huh? Well, that's a good draw. I think that just means my opponent is dead to Crystalline Giant. Because it tramples now. Also, like, First Strike, Death Touch, Trample all together is real good. I only have to deal 1 damage to a creature that blocks it. And then the rest can trample through. Nice. Alright, so now I know I'm playing against a Stoneblade variant. And so I want these Abrades. What don't I want? Is this too slow? It might be too slow. This isn't a normal control deck where I'm not expecting their threat to come down until like turn 4 or 5. They're playing Noble Hierarch to accelerate stuff out faster. It might just be that this is too slow for the matchup. I think I'm going to try without it. I don't think Torpor Orb is worth a card versus Stoneforge Mystic, just in case anyone was wondering that. It seems like my opponent is doing some readjustment of sideboarding. Um, I think this is a keep. This is not an exciting hand. It doesn't really do anything on turn 1, and you really want to be doing things on turn 1. That said, I have a Stomp for an early Noble Hierarch, and otherwise I have a Chalice. The thing that I don't want to happen with this hand is turn 2 Stoneforge Mystic. Order. 9 mana first, I think. Oh wow, is this actually gonna get a spell? I will be relatively excited if I get a spell for this. Nice. I need mana currently. That's my bottleneck right now. I haven't seen a Daze yet, but I like the idea of trying to play a Chalice around Daze here. If I play a Blood Moon, all that happens is my opponent fetches a basic in response, and then they have three sources of colored mana. And that's not actually all that good for me. So I have 2 Fiery Confluence, 2 Sorcerous Spyglass to answer that. They're just going to cast that sword this turn, huh? Alright. So Stoneforge equips. There's a 3/4, attacks as a 4/5. Pro red. I don't have time for Blood Moon. What do I need to play this turn versus next turn? I probably play Crystalline Giant this turn. Hope to roll good things on it over the next 2 turns. It can't be killed by Sword of Fire and Ice pinging, and it can eventually block that thing. I think Cavernous Souls is likely my best draw. Oh god. I'm in bad shape. First strike would be sick. Death Touch and Vigilance. Okay. So that's worth 6. I am really in trouble. So my opponent shoots Crystalline Giant with Sword of Fire and Ice this turn, and then uses 1 Jitte counter to kill it. And then they can move the sword to another creature, so I can't get in there for 6 with Calamity Bearer. Is the line where I win the line where they don't do that? Probably. I also just don't have... yep, they saw the obvious line. I also don't have an out, like, Ensnaring Bridge that can just stop them from attacking here. I can't rip Fiery Confluence. I don't have 4 mana. Yep, we can back this one in here. I've lost this one. I was just too slow. 3 of my cards in hand here are currently uncastable, and that's not really an okay place to be in. Alright, round 2, our opening hand only has 2 mana. I need to mulligan this. Whereas this one is gas, and I'll be keeping this. So the question is, do I want to keep 2 Blood Moons to be able to attempt Blood Moon 2 turns in a row, or do I just want to keep the highest density of threats possible? I think after my opponent has already mulliganed, I'm just going to keep 1 Blood Moon. The awkward thing about this hand is that if Blood Moon successfully resolves, I only have 2 mana afterwards, and I can't actually cast any of my threats. But we're hoping that if Blood Moon resolves on turn 1, it just wins me the game. So this is one of those cases where my plan going right might make something else go wrong with the hand, but I still think it's correct to just lead on Blood Moon. I'll be pitching the 4-drop here, because we might not hit 3 mana immediately, let alone 4. Alright, our turn 1 Blood Moon has resolved. Let's see how good it is. Fuck. So we're probably playing against Merfolk. I am just going to cast the first one of these as a threat. It's worth a lot of damage to just play out, because presumably this doesn't put in a meaningful 1-drop. This starts being relevant at 2. And so I can probably crash in 8 damage with this before it potentially feels threatened at all. Slivers. Okay. So the Blood Moon resolving is going to be very good. The question is, like, do I just play this as a threat and put 8 power in play? I think I do, despite the fact that it's removal and removal is good. I just want to end this game. Alright, looks like opponent is just taking 8 to the face here. Now I'll play this totem. If I draw another land, that becomes very good. Trample, oddly, is less relevant due to Plated Sliver. Now we'll just see what this next turn looks like. I have a bunch of good draws. The giant that doubles my giant damage would be sick in particular. Blood Moon, not so much. So just confirm 5 to activate. I have 4. I'll plus this because, you know, like, it needs to be able to attack. Bad things can happen here, but I don't think I want to go long versus Slivers. Notably, if I would have held back the Bone Crusher Giants for Stomps, I think I would be in a worse position, because this really makes the Stomps awkward. My opponent can opt to double trade here. I don't know if that's something they want to do. Gonna trade once. Okay. Reasons to play Blood Moon. Harmonic Sliver. Reasons to not play Blood Moon. Drawing exactly one of the 3 copies of Chrome Mox so that it allows this to do its thing. I think I am going to respect Harmonic Sliver and play this second Blood Moon. The Harmonic Sliver freeing up my opponent's mana almost certainly means that they win the game. The land's actually pretty good for me. If I attack in with both of my creatures, it requires my opponent to block with both of their creatures. And they're ahead on board, but can't cast very many of their spells. That seems fine. Like, if I take both of these lords off the table, things are significantly less scary for me. I'll take 2 a turn from the Muscle Sliver that's there, plus whatever else they can muster from their hand. But I think they have to leave that 2 forever. That vial at 2 forever. Because their 4th lord. Rough. Not great. I need to draw live next turn or I'm dead. I have a lot of cards to sideboard out for this matchup. Do they have yet another lord? Wow. 5 lords. That Aether Vial did so much work. Alright. We lost the game where we Blood Mooned the 5-color deck on turn 1. That happens. So how am I going to approach sideboarding? I want the Trinispheres and Chalices out. They just need to go for whatever else I can bring in. So, yes. 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 And I guess Sorcerer Spyglasses. Torpor Orb does things against some slivers, but not against all slivers. So some of the slivers have ETB abilities, like Harmonic Sliver in particular, but I don't really know that this is going to be worth a card all of the time. I would like to play first. I'll be keeping this hand. Chromox Imprint, Calamity Bearer, Crystalline Giant on turn 1. Turn 2, Mountain, pass. Turn 3, Chandra Awakened Inferno. Or alternatively, I can just imprint Chandra Awakened Inferno and do a Calamity Bearer based hand. The Chandra Awakened Inferno is a sweeper, which is theoretically really good, but it's also going to kill my Crystalline Giant. I think I'm going to go the giant aggro plan here and ignore this card. I guess there is a question of whether or not I actually play Ancient Tomb on turn 1 or City of Traders. I think it's Ancient Tomb. But I definitely could be wrong here. I think the Ancient Tomb dealing me 4 over the course of this game is acceptable. And then once I have City of Traders in play, I shouldn't really need to play another card. Sorry, I shouldn't really need to play another land after that. Opponent is thinking really hard about this. Do they have a counterspell? Slivers does play force effects, so like, it is possible that they can force this. It is the sort of card where if I get a little bit lucky, it can spiral out of control. Yeah, I don't really know what they're thinking about now. All right, I got Vigilance. I don't mind that. Okay, I'm now of the opinion that my opponent might just be doing something else currently. They also just randomly stopped on my combat step. That Ancient Tomb is a very bad draw for me. Okay, this one gets Force of Willed. I got a Hibernation Sliver out of it. I picked up a +1/+1 counter with Crystalline Giant. Alright, now I need something off the top. I need more business. Oh wow. And I don't think my opponent has Swords to Plowshares. Oh, I'm hexproof now. Yeah. Or they would have done that prior to me going to combat so that that exact thing doesn't happen. Alright. Shoot him in the face, then just play Bone Crusher Giant as another threat. Seems fine. Alright, Ancient Tomb, you got 6 life out of me. I'm a little unsure why my opponent kept their hand. Like, they kept a Force effect, I guess, thinking that the game doesn't end immediately to a Blood Boon. But then they, like, didn't have a second land. They didn't have a removal spell for a creature. Unless they just have something super spicy that just totally gets me this next turn cycle. Um, I don't know why they kept their hand. They frantically drew a bunch of cards there, so I think they're a touch frustrated. I think I'll be running back the same sideboarding configuration. I didn't see anything that game that makes me want to change my mind. On the draw, hands with a braid and Sorcerer Spyglass go up in stock a little bit. Okay. Is this hand keepable? Goes turn 1 Crystalline Giant, turn 2 Crystalline Giant. Bad against an Ether Vial start. Good against a lot of other stuff. I think I'm going to keep it. I don't think I'm YOLOing anymore. If I YOLO and the moon gets countered, I can't deploy threat into threat as of right now. I don't know, maybe I'm supposed to make them have it. No, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna go Mountain Pass. I think the game is just too disastrous if I play City this turn and my Blood Moon gets countered. They have the Force of Will, it's still gonna be good next turn. And this gives them one more look at a Force of Will. But leaves me much less dead if they do have the Force of Will. Like, when I looked at the opening hand, I was willing to sacrifice that City of Traders on turn 1, specifically because I had a very strong play into a very strong play. And with the Blood Moon, I have very strong play into, like, no plays. Do you have it? I assume the answer is yes, in which case I play Crystalline Giant into Crystalline Giant and hope that that gets better faster than their team gets better. Alright, the Bone Crusher Giant is no longer removal, because Crystalline Sliver is gas. Quick Bringers are looking really bad right now. At some point in the not too distant future, I'm just going to be sacrificing my City of Traders when I have to make another land drop. And then these are going to be uncastable cards the rest of the game. Best case scenario for them is probably that they pitch to Chrome Mox. So I'm super happy that my opponent is just cycling here, rather than, like, putting more stuff into play that kills me. Alright. We'll start spinning the roulette wheels. See how it goes. Reach, not irrelevant versus Slivers, by the way. a number of their slivers, such as Gale Rider's sliver, just give flying. Alright, I could put a Quakebringer into play. I don't know that that's actually good. I think I'd rather start getting the other Crystalline Giant going right now. Oh, flying. Nice. I have lifelink on the other one. Alright, my opponent now has a second colored mana, so we'll see what they can do with that. Harmonic's rough. Oh, it's very bad. I also just, like, can't get rid of it right now. So note that this gives all slivers that ability, so I'm going to lose my other Crystalline Giant next turn. I hope to roll Hexproof on it. And because of Crystalline Sliver, I can't remove Harmonic Sliver to stop this ability. Notably, I don't know how I feel about my opponent's choice of Crystalline Sliver. Or sorry, of Harmonic Sliver here. This Crystalline Giant has mathematically a better chance of picking up Hexproof since it already has one counter on it. And so, like, that's just something to keep in mind. I understand wanting to remove that one so that you can get in there this turn. Oh, that's pretty good. +1/+1 counter would be real sick right here. Hexproof would be awkward, and I'd have to think about what I'm doing. My opponent's 2-man lands are rough. Lifelink. Alright. I can play Chandra Awaken Inferno. I can minus it. And if I do, I can kill both Crystalline Sliver and Harmonic Sliver, but it also kills my Crystalline Giant. I can choose to just plus Chandra Awaken Inferno. That puts it at 8 loyalty. And puts my opponent in kind of a weird spot where they need to dedicate resources to dealing with it. Then I can try to get the last couple of points of damage with direct damage to the face rather than answering their board. I don't hate it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. A plus. The issue is that if I minus and I clear the board, my opponent still has 2 man lands. And if my opponent just plays a Lord, their creatures are going to outclass my creatures pretty heavily. And if my opponent plays multiple creatures this turn instead of answering my onboard crystalline giant, that's a win for me. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Oh, going at me. That is mighty interesting. Alright, so I guess the next question is, now what? Now do I -3? Which probably deals a decent amount of damage to their face? I think so. Alright, so I dealt 6 damage with that -3. I am good with that. I'm gonna name Giant here. I'm gonna play... Oh no, this isn't the double damage one. Well, I guess I can't cast these, so I will cast this turn. I don't need to last that long. I need to last 2 turns. Even if Tectonic Giant doesn't get to attack for some reason, I just have this Stomp in hand. Kill my opponent. Alright, my opponent has conceded here. I think my opponent could have made different mulligan decisions this match, if I'm being honest, and ended up in a better place. I didn't feel like some of their hands had a real plan, and that allowed me to win because I had some real dead weight. So I'll be keeping this hand, but I think this showcases the same issue that I was having last match, which is that because these aren't castable on turn 2 most of the time, um, I don't have a follow-up threat for my turn 1 Chalice. I'm going to keep this hand because I have 2 Chalices, and just firing off Chalice into Chalice can be so good against so much of this format. But I really wish these were just Rabble Masters right now. Alright. So we're playing against probably some sort of Painter deck. Yeah, like, if these were castable, I'd feel really good about this hand. Alright, now do I save the second Chalice for 2? Or do I eliminate 0 drops like Lotus Petal? I think I saved the second one for 2. If I were to spike something like a Spirit Guide, it just makes my next turn way better. Oh god. Alright. I'm going to lose to that. Yep. And so I can't play a threat this turn because my threats cost 4 and 5. And so that means I don't pressure this Karn this turn. Yep, we're dead to liquid metal coating for sure. That just acts as Rishaden this turn, and then I'm going to beat the dead horse, but because these cards cost so much mana, I can't just play them next turn. Nice. My opponent, instead of just using Rishaden welded my land into my chalice that was in the graveyard. Alright, that's another uncastable card. Concede. Alright, so my lock pieces aren't really good in this matchup. They, like, technically do things, but I'm going to be sideboarding out some or all of them. Braids and Sorcerer's Spyglasses are good. This is totally reasonable. This is totally reasonable. Blood Moons go out first. My opponent is a red deck. I think I'm going to board out Trinispheres. How do I feel about Chalice? Chalice N1 does have a decent amount of text in this matchup. It just gets invalidated by Karn later on and sometimes by Goblin Welder. But I'm probably either playing Chalice or Leyline or Trinisphere in these 4 slots. Leyline is good against Goblin Welder and Goblin Engineer. Chalice is good against Welder and some of the 1-drops. I don't know how many they have. I don't know if they're going to have Lightning Bolts post sideboard. So basically I am an aggro deck this game, but a lot of my threats cost 4. Not the best. So I think I need to keep Chalice as an early play. Yep. So these 2 cards aren't castable early, and I can't cast this Fiery Confluence because I don't have true red. I can play turn 2 Bone Crusher Giant into turn 3 Tectonic Giant. No. Hand's better. I need to keep my only threat. And then I think I'm going to bin Fiery Confluence. Again, just beating the hell out of this horse. I can't play this as a threat on turn 2, so instead of keeping Fiery Confluence, which is a better card in this matchup, I need to keep a Braid so that I can have a reasonable turn 2 play. Since I can't play a threat on 2. We'll see if my opponent plays something that I can abrade and use my mana on it this turn. Yep. Hey, imagine if I already had a threat in play that could attack and aim Karn this turn. Probably need to go for mana efficiency here. I can play Tectonic Giant this turn, and then Crystalline Giant, plus a braid next turn. If my opponent goes like land, Karn minus, bridge, I abrade that and play Crystalline Giant, I can be in good shape. Any target? No, it's to each opponent. That's unfortunate. Alright, just like I drew it up. Unfortunately, we're going to be 1 point short of killing this Karn immediately. Alright, opponent had Lightning Bolt. Oh, okay. I take the card. Yeah, take the card here. I'm not ending my opponent's life anytime soon. Thank you. Play that next turn. Should have taken the free Lightning Bolt. This triggers at upkeep, right? Beginning of the upkeep. Yep. All right. That Karn. Do the card draw side of this. What am I doing with my life here? Another Tectonic Giant. Try to build a stronger board presence, I guess. I think I'm just dead, though. I think my opponent just minuses Karn, gets Grindstone, plays Grindstone, activates Grindstone, and that's it. There's a world where they've boarded them in, and I'm not actually dead here. So I'm not gonna pack it in, but seems to me like that's the likely outcome here. Yep. Concede. Rough. Okay, this hand only produces 2 mana. It needs to go back. Uh, uh, um, all right. So that dead horse we've been talking about, let's talk about it again. So with this hand, if these were 3 drops like Rabble Masters and Legion Warboss, I could go turn 1, land, Spirit Guide Chalice into 3 different castable cards in a row. And because these cost 4 mana, I can't do that with this hand. So I could play Chalice on turn 1 off City of Traders, and then pitch Spirit Guide in order to play Tectonic Giant on 2. Or I can play Chalice on 1 off Cavern, excuse me, and Spirit Guide, and then not have a turn 2 play. I'm going to keep this hand, but these 4-drops are literally killing me. I guess I'll pitch 1 Tectonic Giant. There's so many ways this hand goes wrong. Wasteland in particular is going to cripple me. Even a Force of Will on this Chalice is pretty bad. Because if my first threat... Yeah. Because if my first threat just eats, say, a Swords to Plowshares, then, like, my hand does nothing because I've lost 2 mana. That Swords to Plowshares colors. Fuck. Yep. Not loving my situation here. I mean, I think I'm committed. The question is just, like, which of these giants do I play? I think the Tectonic Giant. I think it drawing me cards maybe gets me out of this situation, but I'm left with 1 mana. And all it takes is a Swords to Plowshares, and I'm dead. And, like, this is uncastable, this is uncastable. Whereas if these were Rabble Masters, like, I'd still have all my mana in play, and I would just fire off threat into threat into threat with maximum efficiency. Yep. I will take a land. Alright, now we hope to draw cards that are lands. We could be playing against some sort of Stoneblade deck. We could be playing against some sort of Miracles deck. Stoneblade. Yeah. Feel pretty dead. This is straight up worth a Force of Will. Hexproof counter. Reach. Not a relevant counter for this matchup. Hey. This Crystalline Giant can maybe beat the Batterskull long term. Right, we got the +1/+1 counter. That tells me that my opponent doesn't have Swords to Plowshares. I can't really attack with this turn. Need to wait until I have evasion. Alright, my opponent has Batter Skull. They're gonna go to 21. I can attack in chunks of 8, but they're gonna gain 4 back each time. And I can't do what I did in a previous game of just, like, trade with the Batter Skull here, because my opponent has 5 mana and can just, like, bounce and redeploy, or equip to Stoneforge. Life's bad. Alright, my opponent has picked up a Jitte. I don't even know if that's good for me. I legit don't know if I will cast that. First Strike, that's not bad. I think my ability to make my threats uncounterable is really important. But this Blood Moon does take my opponent off of white. Ugh. That's tough. I'm gonna cast it. If I take them off of white and they can't source the Plowshares, Crystalline Giant, maybe I eventually take over this game. Alright. I mean, thank you, opponent, for not putting in Jitte when you still had the opportunity to pre-Blood Moon. Legit. So I'll just be holding up Stomp in this turn cycle. Alright, I have Flying. That's good. I'll just wait till I have Vigilance, though. Don't want that Batter Skull crashing in. My opponent has a lot of basic lands. I am mostly playing this Stomp so that I can justify playing the Bone Crusher Giant on my turn if I miss out on a land. Dead Horse. Alright, I got Death Touch there. First Strike, Death Touch, Flying Reach. Looking for Hexproof and Vigilance. I should find them soon. How many possibilities are there? 10? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep. 10 different ones. So I'm halfway there. And 2 out of 5 times I hit one of the things that I'm hoping to hit. Calamity Bearer. Or just Tectonic. Maybe I just Tectonic Giant and then play Calamity Bearer next turn. I really only want Calamity Bearer once I can safely start attacking. Can you not tell me in chat what I got? Death Touch, First Strike, Flying, Reach, Trample. Okay. That's fine. So my little house of cards can come undone if my opponent finds lands plus Swords to Plowshare to remove Crystal Giant. I haven't hit the hexproof counter yet. Alright, my opponent has conceded. I think we were very lucky to win that game. Very, very lucky. We essentially stole that one with a Blood Moon. My opponent had gotten a basic Plains. I don't think I can possibly win. I'm not really sure what was stuck in my opponent's hand. Like, I also got a little bit of a boon of tempo because our opponent didn't activate their Stoneforge Mystic when they could have. So, like, I got 2 extra mana on one of their turns that could have been critical. Feel lucky about that. Alright. Need these. And probably these. Probably also this. Alright, how am I going to play this? I'm going to go with Castable 5 drops out. And now I'll get exiled by something like Swords of Plowshares anyway. Blood Moon and Chalice are both medium. I have a much better chance of getting a Blood Moon win on the play than on the draw. Because under more normal circumstances, like my opponent had, what, 5 blue mana there or something absurd like that, they should have been able to cantrip to another, like, they should have been able to cantrip string or find a plane. So I'm going to presume that their deck list has, like, at least 3 basic planes in it. Maybe I don't have time to Trinisphere on the draw. And then I can just trim. I think I can trim Mana Acceleration with all these 4 drops. Maybe I'll trim 1 Calamity Bearer and call that good. I'll probably play Trinisphere on the play. We doing this? Just Crystalline Giant into Calamity Bearer. Everyone counterable. I'm so soft to Source of Plowshares. I have moons. I have moons. I'm not keeping this. I can probably get a comparable hand on 6. Hey, let's beat the dead horse and talk about how this is not a castable turn 2 threat because it costs 4 mana. I'll be keeping this hand though. The hope is that Chandra Awakened Inferno just can win this game on its own. I think I'm going to put back Fiery Confluence, but Fiery Confluence versus Tectonic Giant is pretty close. Keeping Tectonic Giant, like, means there are worlds where I can play a threat on turn 2 if I want. That's an awful draw. Alright. See if I can mise this one with Chalice. The issue with Chalice when you're on the play is that your opponent just goes, like, land, turn 2 Stoneforge, and then it doesn't matter too much that you lock them out of cantrips. I also think I need to reboot Moto after this one. Getting a decent amount of visual lag. Well, this lets me play a big bad Planeswalker next turn. The issue is I will have done like half of my life total worth of damage to myself. Interestingly there, my opponent went for a second. Okay, never mind. Yep. I don't have any ways to interact with True Name Nemesis. This is going to be a race, and I hope my opponent spends time attacking my Planeswalker instead of me. I think I'm just going to kill myself with Ancient Tombs. Alright. Notably, this also doesn't produce red for Chandra, so I do have to use the Spirit Guide here. This is the first time that's come up, I think, but the caverns are not free. There are red cards like Chandra and Blood Moon that they don't cast. My opponent has me dead in 4 turns to rename Nemesis. And the only way that I can cast spells right now is by tapping Ancient Tomb. Notably, even if I top deck a regular land, I can't cast Tectonic Giant without tapping Ancient Tomb. And tapping Ancient Tomb takes 1 turn off of the clock currently. I can activate the totem using Spirit Guide and attack. But I don't think that's good. I guess I need to do this. It's just super feel bad. And I can't cast, like, the Calamity Giant next turn to, like, double its damage and still a win out of nowhere. Because, again, mana. Yeah. So I can hit for 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, I'm dead. Like, there's nothing I can hit that deals enough damage to get me out of this, right? No, the Calamity Bear doesn't do it. I have no answers to True Name. Yeah. Concede. Alright. On the play, I guess I need Trinispheres to try to steal this game. And just hope that one of Trinisphere, Blood Moon, or Chalice is in my opening hand and can interact with my opponent in a meaningful way. I cut this Totem, having such bad mana problems, but I don't want this card in my deck. It's so much to activate, and the Ancient Tombs are going to cost me life to activate it most of the time. I think I'm going to go down on my damage doublers. I know it's a payoff card for this tribe, but I think we're trying to cheese this one. Yeah. This is fine. I don't have a threat. Alright, my opponent has mulliganed. So now is the $1,000,000 question of, do I want to try to Sorcerous Spyglass on turn 1 in order to hit a fetch land? I think the answer is yes. Chalice is still great on turn 2. But Sorcerous Spyglass loses a decent amount of oomph. When you draw Spyglass late, it's meant to kind of shut off artifacts and planeswalkers that are problematic, but when you draw it early, it is... Wow, my opponent just let that resolve? That seems insane to me. They're now just, like, very likely to brainstorm lock themselves and die. That's a good draw, because now they still have a blue card to pitch to Force of Will. They have shuffled. Awkward. This is going to go on Giant for the future. I'm not going to use this to cast Spirit Guide. This gets their Force of Will plus Brainstorm. Alright, Force of Will, Brainstorm gone. That's more or less like I drew it up. Now we live off the top. My opponent draws a non-prismatic Vista fetch land and can fetch away that prismatic Vista. That's a huge win for them. It's really unfortunate that, like, they drew back-to-back 1-mana blue cantrips. Alright, this one's falling apart. This is really awkward. If I want to be able to abrade on my opponent's turn, I need to imprint the Spirit Guide now. But then if my opponent has like some sort of disenchant effect, they get a 2-for-1 out of it. Guess that would mean they're not pulling up Sorcerer's Spyglass. I'm gonna value being able to cast Abrade on my opponent's turn at least a Spirit Guide worth of value. Alright, so the good news is they don't have a threat yet. Bad news is kind of everything else. Just play Bone Crusher Giant, let it eat a Source of Plowshares. Kind of awkward. Gives me some value and I get 4 damage out of the card, but I deal 2 to myself in order to do that. I think this one drags on long enough where I'm going to try to wait for a Chalice or a Trinisphere or something. I'm not willing to take the self-damage here, since I have no outs to True Name Nemesis. Okay, it looks like I'm not just immediately conceding to Jace on turn 4. That's good. I guess I'll play Tectonic Giant here. Again, because I'm playing these 4-drops, I can't double spell in this turn cycle. I don't have enough red pips. But if these were like Rabble Masters and War Bosses, different story. Supreme Verdict answers that cleanly without actually using a card, or without actually giving me another card. I also probably need to reboot Magic Online before the next one. Getting a mild to decent amount of lag. So far in this league, Crystalline Giant has been really, really, really impressive. But threats at 4 and 5 have been unplayable. Like, Crystalline Giant has really accrued a bunch of counters and done some cool things. But I am tripping over the mana cost of so many of my cards. Fuck. That's so annoying. Like, Ugh. Well, not bad. It is not as good as the card that I had previously, but it's a magic card. Maybe I paved the way to actually be able to stick some giant a few turns down the line and rumble. I haven't gotten Vendilion clicked in a long time. I am losing so much clock to Moto lag. This is quite ridiculous. One votes for Bone Crusher Giant. Sure. I voted. Please. Alright. I've taken my opponent off of blue and white. That's worth something. Come on. Yeah. That's about the worst case scenario. Nice. I needed to use the Abrade on the Vendilion click. Like, I have no pressure in play. I can't just let them chip away for 3. They'll have a few outs to the Batter Skull, but it's going to be really hard to answer that while they can hold up Stoneforge, bounce it, return it. Crystalline Giant maybe gets me out of this. I'm taking 5 a turn. Alright, that's just lethal damage. I can go ahead and concede here. And that's match. My opening hand here doesn't make enough mana. Like, I can only make 2 mana, and my threats cost too much. I think I probably ship this one when I'm on the draw to try to find something that can be a little more proactive. Dead horse beating time. Imagine if these were 3-drops, and I could just play turn 1 threat into turn 2 threat. Hey, imagine if these were 3 drops, and I could just the 5-card hand, and not a particularly good one. Like, these 4 drops are costing me so many games. It's very bad. I need to go to 4. This doesn't win games with Magic enough of the time. Like, I can keep a 5-card hand that's like this, or like swap Calamity Bear with the second Tectonic Giant. But like the stomp side of this isn't castable, so I'm playing a turn 2 4/3 into nothing unless I draw a red source. No. Imagine if these were castable cards. On a 4-card hand, this is Cavern, Tectonic Giant, Bone Crusher Giant. No. This is honestly the best hand so far, I guess. Like, this one and the first one are... The first one's probably better than this, but... Yikes, basically. No. 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 I guess I'll take myself off real red. Alright. Opponent, can you beat a Crystalline Giant? Man, if we would have kept a bad hand with a bunch of spells, he would have been so rewarded. Do I... Do I pay 2 life and stomp Veteran Explorer? Is that where we're at? I think that's where we're at. The old Blood Moon. Yep. Hexproof. Lifelink. Not what I'm going for. My opponent has so many cards. I mulligan to 3. Field of the Dead. That's mighty interesting. Alright, let's roll some sort of evasion on Crystalline Giant, please. Reach, not evasion. Probably gonna walk into like an Ice Fang Coatl here. Do I have any choice? I don't think I have any choice. Opponent misplayed by giving me a chance to get a hexproof counter. So now next turn, I can Blood Moon to shut off Field of the Dead before it becomes a problem, and then also play Bone Crusher Giant. That's a nightmare. Now on the flashback, they'll hit my Blood Moon. And then Field of the Dead will end up being live. Yeah. This is more of a game than I was expecting for a mold 3. Try to get a card out of this here. I mean, yeah. I am woefully behind. My opponent is just going to dig further ahead with Jace the Mind Sculptor. Alright. Let's scoop it up there. Now that the Field of Dead is active again, I'm comfortable conceding. Against these Nick Fit style decks, I just bring in as much gas as I can. Notably here, the Giants are just going to die in combat to Death Touchers. And being able to generate Goblins probably be better than the Giants here. Admittedly, the Goblins are slightly worse against Plague Engineer than the Giants are, though. I think I want Spyglass. I don't think I'm going to play Blood Moon against this deck. I'm on Trinispheres. Slash, do I want to Braid for things like Plague Engineer? I think my Derpy 5-drop better than Trinisphere, but it's probably close. The big thing that Trinisphere does is make it so you can't Cabal Therapy, Flashback, Cabal Therapy in the same turn cycle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can YOLO on a turn 2 Chandra. Uh, Fuck it. This one's for the people. It's slightly awkward against Ghost Quarter, I guess. I'm going to cast Chromux and imprint one Spirit Guide so that my opponent can't possibly get a 3-for-1 with a Cabal Therapy. Please don't hit my 2-up sideboard card. Nice. Alright, let's see if we get Assassin's Trophied, which is like a billion D for 1. Oh, we didn't. That's mighty nice. Oh, it's not spell or ability, it's just spell. Worth stomping their face? Probably worth stomping their face. It's awkward if this side of it gets countered because this is the first counterable thing that I've cast this game, but otherwise, every point of damage matters. Okay. We mised a game with Chandra Awakened Inferno. I take those. I think I'm going to keep sideboarding as is. This has no mana. I guess I'll keep this. That's not a really castable card, so I need to throw it back. Beating the dead horse again. I wish it was a Rabble Master, because then I would have had a real threat that I could play on Kalo's heavy hands. Alright, my opponent gets some mana ramp. Oh, my opponent has Mulligan pretty deep. They only have 3 cards remaining. I didn't notice that. I think I'm going to play Ancient Tomb this turn. The reason being that if my opponent goes Veteran Explorer and sacks it, that puts me up to 4 mana, and then City of Traders is 6 mana, so I can play Chandra Awakened Inferno. Oh. I see. Remember those deck building sins I was mentioning before? Another one of mine was stop shoving Uro into every deck that you could possibly shove it into. I think this is going to be a great example of that. Now, if my opponent can get to it soon. Sure. But they have 2 cards in graveyard right now. One of their lands does not produce green or blue, and they're about to get Stone Rained. I believe Stone Raining them to keep them off of Jace is more important than casting Trinisphere. Okay. Let's play this turn. 4 mana available. Chalice and Trinisphere are both strong here. I think Trinisphere is stronger. I guess I could have Chaliced first, but in my mind, like, by using Spirit Guide, but in my mind, this Spirit Guide is for the Chandra Awaken Inferno. Yeah, sure. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Icefang Coatl is not keeping up with Chandra's loyalty, so I am good with just throwing this into play and not answering that. Notably here, opponent is on 4 mana and can't flashback their Uro. What am I doing? Am I chalicing? Stopping their cantrips, just making it harder for them to get blue, blue, green, green. I can buy that. God, I hate how they retemplated this. Alright. Adjust. X is 1. Okay. Done. It's possible I'm just supposed to throw the first Bone Crusher Giant into play. I guess I should technically do this on their turn for Force Negation, but they could just hard cast it on their turn. Yeah, stop shoving Uro in the decks where Uro doesn't belong. Just case endpoint. Each opponent? Each opponent. Nice. I think you still need to be attacking. Alright. 2 damage to each opponent. That's convenient. Can't really attack with this into that board. This staring contest is really awkward and favors my opponent, because they're going to find Uro mana eventually. Luckily, Uro doesn't gain them life. So I can trade with it in combat. And between Trinisphere and Chalice, they will likely have a hard time refueling it. A mid-combat spot removal spell from my opponent is pretty annoying. Do I attack with Tectonic Giant? Eh. There's a temptation to like attack with it and try to convert it into other cards, but I have like 3 damage a turn cycle, and I can just chump block against Uro a couple times rather than trying to trade with it. Trading with it opens me up to some weird things. Oh god. Well, I guess like I shut off lifelink, right? That's not actually the end of the world. I'm glad my opponent hasn't taken more pot shots at me. That's unfortunate. Alright, how do I win? Slash, what's most important to kill? Kalitas? I just can't deal with a stream of zombies. Yeah. Not great. Oh, they also have the removal spell for the Rubbins. Alright, Fire Confluence? Not Fiery Confluence. Do I need to attack? I can hit Fiery Confluence for 6 damage to their dome. That's not good enough. If I play 2 blockers, I take lethal damage still. Yep. Alright. Concede. Alright. Nathan, that list was bad. Like, no two ways about it. This is not competitive. We tripped all over these 4 and 5 drops basically every single match. And while they did do some cool things sometimes, the vast majority of the time, my opening hands were bad. I wasn't getting enough mana to cast these. I don't like it. That's all there is to it. Like, Crystal and Giant, great, awesome, like very good card. But I would much rather have Rival Masters and Friends in this deck. I can understand wanting to try something different right now because like there's lots of Plague Engineer running around and Plague Engineer is good against goblins, but this isn't it. I do not think this is it at all. It is exceptionally rare for me to go 1-4 with a Red Prison deck. Like, I know what I'm doing with this archetype, and just every mulligan was just so brutal because of these 4 and 5 drops. Like Quakebringer in particular, we didn't get into play at all until the final round, and that was only because we were playing against Nick Fit and they gave me lands. So while like Calamity Bearer and Tectonic Giant like definitely can do cool things, I think the raw mana efficiency of Legacy requires you to not be playing the 4 drops unless they just win the game on their own, and these cards don't just win the game on their own. So there's my unadulterated, heart of truth take on this deck list. Anyway, YouTube folks, I hope you enjoyed this despite the fact that it didn't go well. Like, we did get to do like, quote unquote, the thing a few times. Like, we got to do Crystalline Giant into Calamity Bearer, and like that was cool. But I don't know. I'm not sold. And if my deck requires me to be playing cards that look like this, in addition to like a whole bunch of 4 and 5 drops, I think I'd rather be playing another deck. So sometimes the donations don't quite work out. This is a really cool thought experiment, but I don't quite feel like it's there. All right, folks, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe, that sort of stuff. It really helps out with the channel and keeps the legacy stuff flowing. If you're interested in having your own donation deck on stream, details are always below the stream, as is the deck list. Have a great rest of the day.